And Ismail, you can leave it on the screen for a few seconds. Bismillah. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulullah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. May peace be upon you. This is Edward Ahmed Mitchell, the Deputy Director of the Council on American Islamic Relations, welcoming you to today's episode of CAIR on Air. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope all of you are doing well and staying safe. Today, we're going to be discussing something that is very important, happening halfway around the world, but very much involving the American people and our government, and that is the trial visa waiver program the United States is overseeing, and this happening in Israel right now. The Israeli government has claimed that they will be treating people equally, regardless of whether they're Palestinian, Israeli, American, not American, coming into their country. But we're quickly seeing that that is not the case. CAIR, American Muslims for Palestine, and others have gotten significant complaints about Palestinian-Americans experiencing travel discrimination while attempting to travel to Israel, to Palestine, or within the areas. To discuss the exact complaints that we're getting, what this means for the trial period, what the United States should do about this, happy to bring on our special guest today. Let's bring her on. Aya Ziyada is the Advocacy Director of Americans for Justice in Palestine Action. That's AJP Action for short, and we're very happy to have her with us here today. Assalamu alaikum, Aya. How are you?
Walaikum assalam. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. So, Aya, first, for those who don't know the background of this situation, what is the visa waiver program, and what is going on right now with this trial period? Just explain the background of how we got to this point, and then we'll talk about the discrimination cases we're hearing about.
Sure, yeah. So for anybody who doesn't know what the visa waiver program, it's this program that the U.S. has established with multiple countries, which allows citizens of each country to enter each other's countries without a visa. So essentially just with your passport. That's why Americans are able to enter so many countries without a visa. So for the last few years, Israel has been attempting to enter this program and have been denied on the basis of discrimination. The number one requirement of entering this program is reciprocity, which Israel has proven not to meet. However, unfortunately, our administration has been adamant on admitting them into the program. So despite being denied last year, they pretty much got the cheat sheet of how to enter the program. And on July 19th, the now former Ambassador Nides and the Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Herzog, signed a memorandum of understanding, or also known as an MOU, to facilitate Israel's potential participation in the visa waiver program. The memorandum specified a trial period of 30 to 45 days, during which Israel's eligibility for the program would be assessed. And as a part of the agreement, Israel launched a pilot program to grant unfettered passage, they claim, for Americans, including those of Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim backgrounds, to Israel and the West Bank through Ben Gurion Airport. So the main two ports of entry into Palestine are Ben Gurion Airport or the border from Jordan. So Israel is promising to admit Arabs, Muslims, Palestinians into the country without a visa and without discrimination.
So, obviously, when this program was first announced, I think I heard from some people in the Palestinian community who were hopeful, but most who were very, very skeptical because of what they've experienced attempting to travel for decades. Can you tell us a bit more about why the United States refused to even try this trial thing for so long? What exactly was the Israeli government doing to Americans who attempted to travel there if they were Palestinian descent? Tell us about, before the trial period, some of the injustices that they experienced trying to travel.
Yeah, I mean, in order for Israel to be deemed eligible, so we've been having meetings with the State Department and DHS for the last 2 years on this issue. As people might know, there's this set of COGAT regulations, which essentially was established last year and makes it even more difficult on top of the discriminatory track record that Israel has towards Muslim, Arab, and Palestinian Americans trying to enter into Israel. They established a new set of rules last year, which made it even more difficult, and it allowed for more barriers. And essentially what Israel does is it claims to deny people on the basis of security risks. And if you look at the MOU now with the trial period, the United States is giving them leeway to that. So despite the fact that we've been getting feedback from DHS and state, the Department of Homeland Security, that Israel is not qualified for the program. In fact, 3 days before this pilot program was put into effect, the Department of Homeland Security there was like a statement released in an article that literally stated from DHS that Israel has a long way to go before they are ready to be admitted into a program due to the lack of reciprocity. So for years, as we all see and know, Israel has denied Palestinians, Arabs, Muslims, or even just regular Americans or even Jewish Americans on the basis of a security threat if they're pro-BDS or if they have spoken out on Palestine human rights for any reason. And we've seen discrimination past the regular ports of entry. So we're talking about checkpoints. We're talking about literal deaths going back from early 2000s to Rachel Corrie being killed to last year, Shireen Abu Akleh being killed. Israel simply does not qualify for this program, and we've seen it.
Now, tell us about what's happening now with the trial period. We've gotten complaints. I know you have. Give us some examples of some of the difficulties that Palestinian-Americans, and remember, we're talking here about American citizens, right? It's bad enough that Palestinians who are Palestinian are experiencing all sorts of injustice, but even Americans of Palestinian descent are not immune to this, despite what Israel is claiming in their MOU. So tell us, what are some of the things that the Palestinian-American community is experiencing as they tend to travel either to Israel, past checkpoints? What are some things you're seeing?
Yeah. So there's a lot of different degrees of struggles. One of them, prior to the program starting, the trial starting, there was a Palestinian American who wasn't even allowed to board her flight from New Jersey to get to Ben Gurion because the airline itself is denying Palestinians from even getting onto the flight. So that's one level of it. The next level of it is you have Palestinians that have Gaza IDs that are being denied because Gaza wasn't included in the MOU. So if you're a Gazan Palestinian, you cannot get in. We're seeing a lot of examples of this. There was a family that submitted a complaint to us that were stopped at the Hezma checkpoint within Palestine while traveling from Al-Bira in the West Bank to Yafa in Israel, despite having all the requirements, all the paperwork. And this is after the pilot had started. This was last week. They were denied entrance from that checkpoint and they were rerouted to another. And they had 3 kids, a whole disaster. And you're finding there's different layers of difficulty and loopholes that were placed in the MOU. So for example, if you are a Palestinian American residing in the West Bank, trying to leave the West Bank, which we commonly see going from the West Bank to Jerusalem, oftentimes Palestinian Americans are denied if they have a Palestinian ID.
So, what you're describing is exactly what we've seen. So I'll give you one example. We got a complaint from a Virginia restaurant owner, a businessman, a very well-respected businessman who traveled with his family into Israel, and he was attempting to obviously visit the what is recognized as Palestinian territory, and he was denied entry. They said, your family can come in, but you can't. And no explanation given, just something about security written. And in fact, what they told him is that you can still try to get in, but you just can't come through this entry point. Try to go to a different entry point. So he was sent to, I think, Turkey, then Jordan. He was sent bouncing around on like this round trip to come to a different Israeli entry point, and he was denied again when he got to the second entry point. And he's just been sitting there literally in limbo, waiting for several days. I think he's trying to come back to the United States now. But we've alerted the State Department to this. Another example, you had a family from Iowa, who actually we know well at CAIR, who went there, were traveling in 3 different cars through a checkpoint. And the family, the first car that went through, the family, they wanted to force them out, make them to go to a separate security area away from all the other people who are traveling through, into like a caged area and be subjected to extra screening. And also the area they would have sent them to would have required like another hour of the trip. So again, sending them to a different entry point for security. One of the people in that first car is a former civil rights activist who threw a fit and fought about it verbally. And so they were actually let through. But her relatives in the second and third car didn't obviously raise as much of a stink, and they were forced to go on the alternate route and being subjected to this humiliation, being put literally in a cage and subject to this extra security for no reason, just because they are Palestinians. So we've alerted the State Department to this. I know we're telling Aya, remind everyone, if they experience something like this, they should tell you, they should let AJP know, but also they need to alert the government, correct? Tell us about how they should be doing that.
Yeah, so the first and foremost thing that you should be doing is the embassy needs to know about these incidents, because the embassy is the one that initiated this trial period. So they need to be getting all of these incident reports firsthand. So there's a U.S. Embassy form that you can fill out that is also linked to our hotline. So if you go to ajpaction.org, there's a hotline link. You'll find the embassy link there first, which you should fill out first. And then we have our own for us to collect data that's necessary, because unfortunately the data isn't shared with us, and we need to be keeping track of this as much as possible. And also, if we can help you in any way, we'll try to. But definitely be recording these incidents. Even before this trial period started, if anybody remembers, this past December, there was a Palestinian-American attempting to go from the West Bank to Jerusalem. She has a Palestinian ID, but she's also an American citizen from St. Louis. She was arrested for 4 days and moved from one detention center to another, and her family could not get a hold of her, simply from trying to go from the West Bank to Jerusalem. And again, American citizen. And so this is a serious issue. There's a long-standing track record of Israeli discrimination against Palestinian Americans and Americans in general, and we know exactly why they're doing it. And so I just don't believe the 30 to 45-day trial is fair enough, nor will it actually determine whether or not Israel is going to change its discriminatory policies against Arab and Palestinian Americans.
I mean, if this is what they're doing, when they know they're being monitored by the U.S. government, I can only imagine what they would do if they're fully into the program and the monitoring ends, and they don't feel the pressure, especially this government under Mr. Netanyahu and the racists and war criminals of his administration. So I know you're on top of it. I want to thank AJP Action and everyone else who's monitoring the situation. Again, if anyone experiences travel discrimination, they should be reporting that to the U.S. Embassy, and also let AJP Action CAIR let someone know so we can keep track of that as well and report it through our channels as well. I want to thank you so much for your time today. Keep us posted on these developments, and we will certainly be watching the situation as it unfolds, God willing, inshallah. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And thank you all for watching today's segment. We will put in the comments on Facebook the links that you all need to learn more about this issue, where to go to report any complaints, and of course, let your relatives, Palestinian Americans, know where they should go to file those complaints with the embassy, and also to let AJP Action CAIR and others know about this. Thank you all so much for watching today. Inshallah, we will see you next time. Until then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.